This week on Tech Stuff Tuesday, subwoofer parts are not universal. Very frequently I get requests to build a recone for, say, a band hammer. 4-inch coil. They think, I got a 4-inch coil motor, I'm just going to put that in it and it's going to perform like a band hammer. That's not the case for a few reasons. One, the motor is a very integral part of a sub design. Doesn't matter what soft parts you put in it, the motor is the motor. It can only operate within its limits. Yes, you can put better soft parts in it or different soft parts in it to make it act differently as a complete thing. But just because you put band hammer parts in another motor doesn't make it a band hammer. First thing for consideration. So if you think it's just going to bolt up, that's what you want, even if you want just the parts, we're going to look at what's going to be different. So here we have a 4-inch coil motor. I don't remember which one this is. Several different companies use it under different brand names. I've got it to recone for somebody. But the first thing that we can look at here is the coil. So we got to make sure that the coil is going to fit in the gap. This one rubs. It rubs because the outside diameter of the coil is the same as the inside diameter of the top plate. That's not going to work. So this coil can't be used. So you can't just say, oh, it's a 4-inch coil. Every 4-inch coil does not measure the same. So first things first on this one, can't use it. It rubs the top plate. So then we have one that's narrower. This one will fit in the top plate just fine. You see you have a little bit of room to wiggle. Problem is, it's sitting on the bottom of the motor and there's the top of the coil. This coil is too long. It will smack the back plate. That also will not work out. So again, 4-inch coil does physically fit diameter wise and everything, but won't do you any good. It'll smack the back plate, it'll die. So now we're on to a third coil. This one fits in the gap fine. All that's good. And the actual coil length is correct for this motor depth and top plate size. So this would be the appropriate coil to use in this motor, not either of the other ones for various reasons. Further proving, it's not just a universal, it's a 4-inch coil so it'll work scenario. So now that we've got the coil figured out, we know that's going to work, we have the basket. This basket will bolt right up. That's going to be fine. It has 2 bolt patterns. This outside and this inside. This motor only has 1 bolt pattern on it. It happens to be the outside pattern on this basket. So in the case of this 12 basket, this one will bolt up just fine. However, because we only have 1 pattern there, the inside won't, which means if we try this basket, it won't fit. It won't bolt up. You'll have to drill them out. And if you don't have a good way of precisely doing that, it's going to move around because you have to bore out the holes. It's going to be very, very dirty on the hole. Or it might be so large, bolts won't properly hold it. It can shift. Things will not be assembled correctly. This won't work. So basket, not necessarily universal to a motor either, depending on the bolt pattern. Same thing with this guy. We have the same inside pattern, but we don't have any room to drill anything out. We can't go any further out, can't go any further in. This one is what it is. So there is no possible way that we could use this basket on this motor as a result of we can't even drill it out. So the next consideration that we have are spiders. On this basket, which is the last one that we can't drill out, we have multiple spider landings. This very top one below that, one below that, and if you really wanted to, you could even go below that. So you've got several different landings that we can use on this basket. This style, however, we only have 1 option for a spider. We can only use a 10-inch. That's all that this will allow. We can't do anything different. So unless your design calls for a 10-inch spider on this basket, you can't use it. Whereas you could the other one if it will mount to the motor. On this basket, we can bolt it to this motor, and we have two options for spider landing. But that leads us to the next issue, cone depth. So let's say we've got this motor and this basket made it up, and we're going to build this into a 12, but we want to use this cone on it. Ignore the fact this is a 3-inch coil cone for a 4-inch coil motor. So what we have going on here, we have a certain amount of travel that we can have in the surround itself, which needs to be able to be supported by the coil length and also the spider diameter. With a larger spider diameter, like the 10-inch or even a 9 1/4 or anything like that, that will far surpass the capability of this surround as a consideration. If your coil can also accommodate that, you'll absolutely damage this. So the next consideration we have is cone depth. Ignore this extra on here, it'll emphasize the point a little bit. But if you notice, it is way higher than where the bottom spider landing is, but it's very close to where the top spider landing is. If we try another cone, this one is a little bit different, but we also have about the same dimension. And a third one yet. This has the most travel on the surround, but it's also much deeper. This one is too deep. It will go past the bottom landing and the top landing. So if we want to use this cone, we can't use this basket. If we want to use this basket, it will fit on there, but the cone is still below the landing down here. So we can't use this cone on this basket either, even though the 10-inch spider would be useful for this surround. So we have various considerations with the fitment of how everything's going to go. Is the cone too deep? Is it too shallow? Is it going to end up being very high up to where you have a large gap between the bottom of the cone and the spider? That's not generally desirable. When we look at the depth between the spider landing and the top up here, that's also going to affect the cone angle. So we don't have very much angle here coming in. So that's also going to limit our throw because the bottom of the cone can actually hit the spider. So if we've got a 10-inch spider on here that can support a lot of throw, as that cone moves in, the angle of the spider will go like so, and then you have the cone and the leads and everything hitting the spider, which can cause premature wear. If you don't have the cone angle very good, that can cause problems. If you had like a 2.5-inch coil, or maybe even a 3-inch coil in this scenario, that could cause a problem on this particular basket because that's not that tall right there. We do use this on the Banhammer line, which is a 4-inch coil, which works out fine for that cone angle on this. But if you're using a different spider size, like on this basket, that's a little bit less of a consideration, even though the height is the same here, but we can use a smaller spider on here. So what we have pointed out from all this is not every coil that's a 4-inch coil will fit in a 4-inch coil motor. That's going to apply to every size sub. You have to look at the dimensions of the pole, the ID of the top plate, the motor depth, the top plate height, and make sure that the coil is not going to smack the bottom or just have an enormous amount hanging out beyond where excursion can go to. That can cause cooling problems. We have to look at the spider size for the basket that you have. If you're just trying to get it for another sub and then just bolt it right up, you can have a difference from here to here or here to here, and that will cause misalignment issues. If you have spacers or not, that's going to be different. So you've got to make sure that all of these parts are designed around the motor you're using, the basket you're using, the desired spiders, the cone you want to use, and have all of the abilities to move as far as it can without hitting anything mechanically, be it in the gap or hitting the back plate. There are some subs that are basically catalog subs, like this one, that several manufacturers build the same sub and put a different name on it. In those cases, you could get a recone for one and go across the other if the basket is identical. But in most cases, that's not going to be the case. You can't just order a lowballer recone and then it fit in another 2.5 inch coil, whatever. Same thing goes for band hammers. You can't just order a 4-inch band hammer recone and just magically fit in something else and it works fine, and it's definitely not going to perform exactly like a band hammer does. That's all a function of the motor, the coil, the suspension, all that working together and the way that it's supposed to. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by shopping from emfcaraudio.com, where we have the full line of EMF audio products: Sundown Audio, Audio Control, SBC, and XS Power. We have a link to our Patreon in the description below. You can support us that way. The more we have supporting, the more we can do with various videos and put more product and testing into things. Make sure you subscribe for future videos and hit the notification bell. If you have any suggestions for a future video, put those in the comments below. We'll answer any questions that you have about this. Make sure you check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and I'll see you again in another Tech Stuff Tuesday.